Hi, everybody. You have a nice warm cup of tea. We're going to be sitting here meeting Rukmini. This is our very special guest. Of course, we've already had somewhat of an introduction. A beautiful.
So people can move forward. We have space on the couch.
Yeah, there's if you want to sit on the couch also, you're welcome to do that. There's also space up front. There's always good spots up front. That's right.
Aren't those muffins yummy? I could just live on those muffins.
So what we thought we would do is, I'm going to introduce Rukmini a little bit more to you so you can understand a little bit more of her history, why we invited her here. And we're going to have a conversation. I have some questions that I'd like to ask her, someone who's been practicing bhakti for so many years. And that you also may have questions as we are going. Something might resonate with you, something that you'd like to ask. And if that's the case, you can raise your hand at any time. And we're also going to reserve some time at the end for some questions as well. If you find anything that we are discussing here interesting. But so Rukmini has been practicing bhakti since before bhakti was a thing. Right? People know about bhakti now, but it wasn't always like that, right? So I think it was the 60s that you...
Yeah, 1968.
1968. And I think there's a famous picture of you in a hotel in Montreal with John Lennon and in the Be-In, right?
Yeah, bed-in.
Bed-In.
Yeah, you can find it on YouTube. I think you can Google or go to YouTube and find like Hare Krishna's in John Lennon's bedroom and something like that. Huh? Yeah, the Queen Elizabeth Hotel. So I think he was trying to get into the U.S., but the U.S. wouldn't let him in. So they wouldn't, right? Yeah. So they had this bed in, and it was the time of be-ins, and so he had a bed in, and he was singing "Give Peace a Chance," and so he invited us to come. You know, the most outrageous people in the whole Montreal. So of course, invite us, and Timothy Leary was there. Wow. Yeah, if you watch the video, you can recognize some different faces. But yeah, it was quite a memory. So I'm dancing there. I think I'm wearing some kind of a red sari or something, like, dancing. But yeah, that's a wild memory.
So you are living in Washington, D.C., but you're also based in New York, right, from the Bhakti Center?
Kind of, yeah. I live in suburban D.C., but I'm on the board of directors of Bhakti Center. And have any of you heard of the Bhakti Center or been to the Bhakti Center? Yeah, it's a lovely, spiritual oasis, I would say, in New York City. And they have, kirtan, and there's a beautiful Ayurvedic restaurant on the ground floor, and it's a lovely place to stop if you're ever in New York City. And they have sessions like this, lovely, community groups and people going deeper into the Bhakti tradition. So, yeah.
You've founded this Urban Devi Collective. What is that?
Urban Devi. So, it's meant to uplift the voices of women on the path of bhakti. So I feel like women usually, our voices get sidelined, or maybe we're too shy to speak up, or whatever, we get drowned out. So it's about uplifting the voices of the women in a broad way on the path of bhakti. But I mean, to me, bhakti is very broad. It's not a sectarian little in the box kind of a thing, but I feel like it's kind of the essence of spirituality. And it's, to me, it's kind of like, the way I think of it is, it's like there's this underground river that's just underground, flowing under the ground and through all places and all countries. And then there are these oases that just come up in different places where people just can get refreshed and invigorated. So to me, that's like, the spirituality without any name. And I think that's what I believe. That's what I believe my teacher Prabhupada was teaching, was giving kind of bhakti without borders. Uh, because it's by any name. It's kind of like, it's like fire. When it touches you, it's unmistakable. You know what I'm saying? And it's authentic, it's real. And when it touches you, your heart has been touched. So that's what I'm seeking. And I think that's what Urban Devi. So we have these monthly sanghas online. You're welcome to join if you're a guy. It's not gender, well, it's just women. but yeah, urbandevi.com, you could check it out. And we have women who speak on different topics. I think it was last Sunday, we had a friend of mine who lives in Kansas, who's a lovely person. She started life as a mimist. Actually, she's a really beautiful person. She's a yoga teacher. She lives in Kansas. And so she spoke about the idea of my way or the highway. And she talked about, just helping us deal with people in our lives who operate like that, and how to negotiate those kinds of missed relationships or whatever. So it's nice. Yeah, you're all welcome to check it out. Yeah.
Was it connected with that movie, the Women of Bhakti?
Yeah, so there's a movie called Women of Bhakti. I'm in that movie. There's some, quite a few voices, women on the path of bhakti or women on the path of yoga, speaking about bhakti. So that's something, I think that's also on YouTube. You could check it out. And I have a YouTube channel if you want to look at some of the talks I've given. But it's very heart-opening to me. I think that's what we're all, I can't speak for everybody in the whole world, but I think that's what many people are seeking, that open-hearted experience of connection.
Mm-hmm. So Rukmini is very well known in the bhakti communities, but she also has a very famous son, and Gauravani, for any of you who like to look up Kirtan, on YouTube or download albums and things like that. Gauravani is a very accomplished musician, and he's been in groups like, anyone heard of he's in the Hanuman, right?
Hanuman, yeah.
Hanuman. Yeah, he's one of the main people in that group. There was also, he put out this album called 10
Million Moons.
10 Million Moons.
And then one called As Kindred Spirits.
Yeah.
So I think, now he's kind of trying to do more with, he was just in a recording studio in El Paso, Texas, and with some wonderful musicians. So I think he's going to do more under that label of As Kindred Spirits. But you can find him on SoundCloud or different places. And he's a beautiful person on the path of bhakti. Yeah.
So I thought I'd ask you some questions just about maybe can everybody hear us okay? Sorry? Yeah. So can I ask you some questions about like your path in bhakti?
Okay.
The point here is to kind of hear from you and also to fill out what is the path of bhakti along the way, right? It's just nice to have someone who's been practicing so long, and through these questions kind of fill out what is the path. But how did you come in contact with bhakti in the first place?
Well, I don't know if any of you are from my generation, but pretty old, I guess. But so in that period of time, the 1960s, 1970s, it was really a time of upheaval, and it was a time of revolution and a time of upheaval, and we were just rejecting the values of our society and our parents and our, everything that we were raised with. Our friends and brothers were being sent to Vietnam to die in a crazy, useless war for no reason, for someone's personal aggrandizement. So, I have to say, I kind of felt like I was dropped from another planet. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing in this place. I felt like an alien. And I just, I would just see people doing the things they were doing and just couldn't figure out why they were doing it. And I was looking for answers, and I think that was just really kind of symptomatic of I mean, it's there today also, you know, but I think it's very symptomatic of that time. And yeah, so, you know, in 1968, I was fortunate to meet my spiritual teacher, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And it's so funny because we were so radical, and his values were so opposite of what we were, the way we were living. But yet he was so authentic that he really touched our hearts, you know. And yeah.
So he was just so he was the 60s when you, so how old were you at that time?
16.
16 years old. And so, and how old was your spiritual teacher at that time?
Oh my goodness. Well, he came from India. He left on a freighter ship from Calcutta when he was 69, and he had his 70th birthday at sea. So he came on this freighter ship. Nobody travels like that anymore, right? I mean, he was penniless, he was homeless, he had no institutional support. He was coming on the request of his guru to come and teach bhakti in the West. And yeah, so let's see. Sorry, I lost the question.
Yeah, so how, so that,
So he was, so let's see, 1968. So he came in 1965. He was 70 when he reached New York. So 65, 67, 66, 67, 68. So yeah, he was like 73, 74, something
Yeah.
like that. So as a matter of fact, my father was from New York, and it was funny because he was so amazed that we wouldn't listen to anyone. Like our motto, we used to have buttons, you know, don't trust anyone over 30. So here's this, you know, here's this like 70 or 75-year-old person, and he comes to New York and he's teaching these values that were so out of our universe. And so my father, actually right before my father passed away, he was saying how amazing it was that Prabhupada came to his very own neighborhood, kind of the avant-garde neighborhood in New York. I don't know, any of you ever been to New York? You know, just the Lower East Side is like for 100 years, over 100 years, it's been the avant-garde neighborhood, you know, O. Henry and the Beat Generation, Bob Dylan, all this kind of stuff. And so Prabhupada came to the very neighborhood where my father used to hang out with his friends when he was in the early 1920s. And here we listened to this elderly gentleman who was just like, came like, you know, like a Martian from another planet. Yeah, but he was, you know, he's just so authentic, so humble. He really, you know, he was in the world, but not of the world. He was so simple, so humble. And, you know, when someone would ask him a question, he could just see the heart. So sometimes people would ask him trick questions, but he would just answer the heart, not really the question, like, am I going off track?
no,
Yeah, so, you know, like you meet a spiritual person, and so sometimes people want to think, well, does this guy know everything? You know, so this one future disciple, I would say he wasn't really a disciple yet, but he thought, I'm going to ask him a trick question, see if he can, you know, trip him up. And so he asked him, how many windows are in the Empire State Building? Can you imagine? Like, you're just trying to trip him up. What's he going to say? And so Prabhupada just shot back without even hesitating. He said, how many drops of water are in a mirage? You know, so just, yeah, and so he would read the heart. And, you know, like once a very arrogant young man asked him in this booming voice, are you seeing God? And Prabhupada said, no, because you are standing in the way. And he would get asked that a lot, but you know, once somebody asked that in a very sincere way, are you seeing God? And he answered so humbly, he said, well, you are also seeing God every day. You see the sunrise. Every day you see the moon. You know, this is, you're also seeing God. You know, so he was just so, just so genuine. And so Bhakti Without Borders is the way I kind of like one thing I'm thinking of. Well, so are we on Prabhupada now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you this one. I'll tell you a couple stories. I'll tell you a few stories. So once they were building this temple in Mumbai, a big temple, a marble temple, and it was a big deal, and a lot of craziness with the municipality. And anyway, there was the architect who was a disciple, one of my godbrothers, came into Prabhupada's room and he said, Prabhupada, one of the stone workers is chanting Allah while he works all day. He's just chanting, and this is Kirtan, right? That's why I said Bhakti Without Borders. This is Kirtan. So while he's working, tapping on the stone, he's saying Allah, Allah, Allah. And so Prabhupada said, I want to see him. And so the architect said, oh, I'll bring him here. And Prabhupada said, no, I don't want to interrupt his work. So Prabhupada went sneaking off to watch this man from around the corner. And here's this, beautiful, simple man. Just while he's working, he's absorbed in meditation. Allah, Allah, Allah. This is bhakti. To me, this is bhakti. He's just connecting. He's connecting with divinity in his way. So that's the story I like. But the story I really want to tell you this is my most favorite story of Prabhupada. And we could talk about other things too besides stories of Prabhupada, but I love this story. So he was visiting a community a country community in West Virginia, and there was kind of a new guy who was given the task of being the night guard at this house where he was staying for the few days that he was there. And so he was guarding the house from outside, and then it started to rain a little bit like today, and so he went into the attached garage to do his guarding service. And then he felt a presence behind him, and he turned around, and there was Prabhupada standing in the garage right behind him. And, like a sincere person said, oh, Prabhupada, is there any service I can do for you? And Prabhupada said the most amazing thing. He said, yes, you can go where I will not go. And this young man was really bewildered because Prabhupada had just come from Chicago, Texas, San Francisco, Japan, Germany. He's heading to New York, London, and so he's just, but you go everywhere. Where is it that you won't go? And Prabhupada said, this is what I love, the amazing part. Prabhupada said, to the future. Go to the future. And then he said, and by the way you treat the people there, they will know how much Krishna loves them. Isn't that beautiful? Just love that story. So, yeah, he was really about opening the heart in an authentic way.
I would like to know, you are referring to bhakti, like a number of times you've just said, this is bhakti to me, like this is what bhakti is to me. Like I've given a few examples. So, and how it's also broad, there's no borders. So can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit? What is it about bhakti that's so broad? And how is it that you can recognize it in so many different ways?
So the word bhakti comes from the Sanskrit root bhaj, which means to share. So it exists in a shared community, and I like we're here today. And I often think of Dr. Martin Luther King, who talked about the beloved community. So he was from a school of philosophers. He studied at Boston University, Dr. Martin Luther King, and there was a school of philosophers called the Personalist School. So I think bhakti is radically personal. I think bhakti is a path of radical personalism. And to me, when people fall off the wagon and kind of don't get it, is when they're trying to put it in their own little boxes, their own little ego boxes, or their own little community boxes or whatever. So bhakti is broad, and it's meant to break us out of our designations. As a matter of fact, one of the symptoms of when someone has realizations on the path of bhakti is that those designations become removed from their hearts. There's a verse in Bhagavad Gita that says that a learned person sees the same spirit in every living being, the same spirit essence, or you could say Atma or Jiva in Sanskrit. So a learned person sees an elephant or a cow or a low-born person or a learned person, all seeing that same shining essence within the heart of every living being. So yeah, that's bhakti. Bhakti's meant to blow open our designations that put us in our little, and to me, that's building community. That's, we're all kind of locked in our own, this is my community, this is my race, this is my gender, this is my country, this is my community. And people who look different or act different from the way I operate are outsiders to me, and then we can scapegoat those people. And then, this is all about war, right? Discrimination, greed. So when someone someone said to me this morning, I don't want to mention her name because I don't want to embarrass her, but it was so beautiful. She said to me that she said to her therapist that her transformation really began when she started practicing this Kirtan Vancouver, that she realized that was when the real transformation in her heart started to happen. And so, yeah, that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a transformation of the heart when those designations get blown away. And when I start to see the same sacred living being in every heart. And yeah, there are different definitions of bhakti. It's in one place it's called a loving responsiveness, which is very beautiful. A loving responsiveness. So responsiveness to what? So I think of, if you think of an instrument like a harp or a sitar that has strings that are played and then sympathetic strings that just vibrate in sympathy with the played strings. So yeah, there's a divine kirtan going on in this world, in the universe that we're not hearing. But when we start to awaken to bhakti, we begin to hear that vibration and we begin to harmonize our hearts to that sacred vibration and sacred dance, actually. So we can talk more about that. So as I said, bhakti is radical personalism. And just to go back to Prabhupada for a second, there's a nice story about him. So I'm saying he was a radical personalist. And I believe that part of bhakti is that what's real is what's personal. When I see in you the person and not just the external this or that, that's when life becomes real. And so here's this little story I was just going to share. So when he first came to New York, he had all these manuscripts that he was trying to get published into books. He brought with him some cases of books, his first 3 volumes of his translations of Srimad Bhagavatam. He brought these cases of books, basically nothing else. But then he had someone helping him, one of the early young men who was coming to the first temple in New York, and he was typing, and he was, and then every once a week, Prabhupada would come to his apartment and pick up the typed manuscripts, and so they were the first temple on the Lower East Side, which you can go visit, it's still there. They were having the first initiation ceremony when someone formally accepts vows to become a disciple. And so this young man who was doing the typing was invited to come and be part of that, but he was very humble, kind of shy person, so he didn't show up. And so that was on a Thursday, and the following night, Prabhupada came to his apartment to pick up his typing work. And apparently he was thinking that he could just do some kind of mechanical service, right? And I'm not going to really give my heart. I'm just going to hold back. And so Prabhupada came to his door. He handed him the manuscript, and Prabhupada just looked at him and he said, "If you love me, I'll love you." If you love me, I'll love you. It's just like give your heart. It's about giving your heart. I just, so that's to me radical personalism. And many philosophers have talked about this. Martin Buber, if you've ever read Martin Buber, the I thou, rather than objectifying other people, seeing others as sacred. So this is bhakti. What was the other? Let's see. A loving responsiveness. There's another definition of bhakti that's, let's see. An offering of the heart, an opening of the heart. That's another nice definition of bhakti. So to me, it's about building community. It's about offering the heart. Like, where is, so when the kirtan began, Anirudh said, is he around? Maybe he's with his kids, but he said this bhakti is the kirtan is a call and response process, right? So that's really the whole process of bhakti, is a call and response. It's about offering my heart from my sincere place, and then receiving, like hearing back, getting intelligence, how to love, how to serve, how to exist, what's my next step. So to put out my sincere call, and then to receive that grace or that wisdom of what are my next steps? How can I better love and serve in this world? So that's kind of bhakti to me, my subjective bhakti world.
I've got a question for you.
Okay.
So you are on one side describing it's almost like a spontaneous embrace of being able to recognize bhakti everywhere, in everyone. And at the same time, you're also describing, like, somebody who takes initiation, or you're also describing yourself as a disciple. So where does the open kind of unbordered bhakti, the recognition of what it is, where does that meet the traditional kind of the tradition of bhakti itself? Like, does that question make sense?
Yeah, I think the tradition itself is very open. Sometimes some people try to box it in, but it's also, there are commitments. When you make a commitment to do a certain practice, then you can go deeper and have more realizations. Like, for example, if an alcoholic makes a commitment to stop drinking, then he gains realizations and strengths and can go further. So when you make a commitment to, for example, do a certain amount of chanting every day, some people here have done that, or just to follow some rules, then you can go deeper and get deeper realizations. It's kind of the difference between formally entering a university, and you're a professor, formally entering a university and just auditing classes. Like, I think I'll drop in, audit a few classes, but not really making that commitment. But, I think there are people that do enter the university that get tripped up in all the externals of that experience. And then there are people who are perpetual, drop-in people also, who don't really want to take it that seriously. So you can fall off either end of the spectrum. Does that make sense?
Yeah, one of the things that I really appreciate about the practice is that a person can take as much as they want, really. Like, some people just enjoy the chanting, and people resonate with that experience, and then some people are propelled to find out what is this tradition more about, right? Or how to go deeper into the experience that they're having in kirtan. What is that experience that we're having in kirtan? Not that we can define it for everybody necessarily, but what's the bhakti piece of it?
Well, I would just say, again, just my subjective view, that it's an opening of the heart. We're experiencing a heart opening. I have this expression that my son really, really likes. I call it the satisfaction of sacred smallness. So, like, if you ask me, well, what are the gifts that this tradition gives, or what are the gifts that my teacher Prabhupada gave? So I would say that first of all, the understanding that we are sacred beings, that we are spiritual beings by nature, eternal, individual, sacred beings. And that, second of all, that, so these are, I guess I'm answering the question, these are some of the, like what I would say, like maybe the fruits of chanting, like what you get when you try this out. The next thing would be that, so because I'm an eternal, sacred, spiritual being, my traumas that I've experienced in my life, what everybody has traumas, right? Whoever we are, whatever we've been through, wherever we've come from, those traumas don't define me because I'm an eternal, sacred, spiritual being. And third of all, that that I have like, I don't want to sound trite, but we each have superpowers that are undiscovered, like things beyond our imagination that we're capable of. And I think that world opens up to us, impossible things. And, impossible things can be accomplished when the heart opens and when we connect. So I was mentioning that sacred, that vibration, that like a symphony, right? You've got the symphony and all the instruments are in harmony. And then there's this, it could be like a discordant vibration when someone's out of tune. So when we learn to harmonize with that vibration that right now, maybe we're not hearing, but when we can learn to harmonize, then it's like this grand symphony can open up in our hearts. This beautiful harmonizing with the sacred can be experienced in our hearts. And we can experience realizations that we never knew were possible. So we can, what I think of? I think of like in New York, I don't know if this happens in Vancouver. New York's really a crazy place. But sometimes you'll see somebody riding on a bike, which I would never even try in New York. Very dangerous. I think they get hit a lot. But anyway, sometimes one of those bicycle people will grab onto the back of a truck. And all of a sudden, instead of going 10 miles or 15 miles per hour, they're going 40 miles per hour because, so it's kind of like a weird example, but we can actually hook up to a divine vibration that will carry us at a velocity that's much beyond our individual capacity and have many realizations and be blessed with powers to transform ourselves, but also transform the people we come in contact with. And these are vibrations, right? Transform the world. So I think that there are always holy people that are traversing the earth. Maybe they have different sectarian traditions, but I think the mystics of all traditions, they're not, they're resonating with each other. They're like beyond the Catholic or Islam or this or this or this, right? Or like St. Francis, right? Or Jesus Christ, So, but yeah, we have the capacity as sacred spiritual beings to be resonating with and operating in a higher velocity and become capable of changing ourselves, changing the people we meet, and changing the world. So this is what's inspiring to me. Yeah, is that?
Yeah, it's real. I have more questions, but I just wanted to pause.
Nitai's so great, isn't he? Who could be better to talk to?
I knew this was going to be good because Rukmini is so warm and actually quite pleasant to sit with and hear.
Oh.
So I'm very happy to be here doing this. But does anybody else have thought or question they'd like to share? I just thought I'd give you an opportunity instead of me just.
He's got a million questions, but yeah.
What you said superpowers are unimaginable things that you never think about. What's your superpower?
What's my superpower? I don't know. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to learn compassion. I'm trying to learn self-compassion. I'm trying to learn deep listening. I'm trying to learn grief support. One thing I'm observing is that I read something, this is so beautiful, that that grief and gratitude are kindred souls, that both are helping us go deeper into the other. So yeah, I mean, we all try to avoid pain, we try to avoid loss in this world, but you've seen a lot of tragedy in your life, a lot of suffering, right? But it makes us go deeper and become more, but the best version of ourselves. So yeah, I mean, those are things I'm trying to learn. I don't know if I have any superpowers, but mushiness, maybe mushiness. I cry easily. I don't know, but I'm trying to learn, trying to listen better and be changed by what I hear. Deep listening. I don't know. But yeah, I feel like there's a lot available to us. Prabhupada used to say that impossible is a word in a fool's dictionary. Whoa. And, he was doing impossible things all the time. Yeah. But sometimes when we fail, like when he was in India, he was just experiencing failure after failure after failure. He's like, there's a biography of Prabhupada that's in about 7 volumes. You can get a condensed version in 1 volume that's called Prabhupada. And while he was in India, it was like failure after failure after failure. And he just kept trying. And then one day things began to shift because he was so sincere, So I think the path of bhakti is about simplicity, sincerity, humility. These are the qualities that resonate, that we see in the mystics, I think, of all traditions. Like sectarian people of all religions get tripped up on the stand up, sit down, bow down, this, that, the other thing, designations. But the real mystics, and again, that's like when you touch fire, this is real. So, and that's like love without borders, right? Or devotion, bhakti without borders. Yeah. What else? Yes.
How did you know that you were touched by fire? When was that moment you were like, oh, it's real?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that, oh yes, so how do you know when you're touched by fire? So that's beyond words, right? You can't explain it in words, but you know in your heart that something's authentic.
What was that moment for you?
Yeah, well, meeting my teacher, seeing people who'd been able to give up lifelong addictions through following the process of bhakti, and just having certain moments when when things were conveyed in an authentic way. Yeah, maybe those are all answers. Just the process of kirtan, when kirtan touches your heart. I think, wouldn't you say that many of you had an authentic experience just now in the kirtan? And you can't really put your finger on it. You go home and somebody says, well, what were you doing out there? And what is kirtan anyway? You can say, it's just so real. It's so beautiful. And, these are sacred names, and they have great power. We'll talk about more in the workshop, but these are the names of the divine feminine, the divine masculine. And so to me, there's this, well, not just to me, but it's there in the sacred literature that at the core of existence, at the center of all existence, there's a dance, between the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and we're all being invited, come join. So that's very sacred and very real. So these are things that I could say have touched my heart. Yeah. I'll tell you a moment. So you were asking about initiation, formal initiation. When I had my initiation, Prabhupada was very beautiful about opening the heart. And so he said, open the heart and then you can inject the medicine, right? Or like sometimes when you give medicine to children, you have to put it in a little jam. So at my initiation, he said to me, "You're a beautiful girl." So then he said, "So now become more beautiful within also." So instead of saying, "Babe, you got a lot of dirt in your heart. You got a lot of layers to get rid of here. You got to work on that." Or, he just said, "You're a beautiful girl. So now become more beautiful within also." So that's very heart opening, open the heart and transform. So bhakti it's about transformation. It's about uncovering the layers. Like we're following the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We can talk about him later, but he talks about how the mirror of the heart is covered with layers of dust from so many lives, so many impressions, so many traumas, happiness, joys, traumas that we've been through for so many innumerable years, innumerable lives. And the process of bhakti is about, like, if you imagine, like there's a mirror. If that mirror hadn't been cleaned in 300 years, it's covered with grime, it's covered with dust. So our hearts are like that. So to uncover the dust that's been, and what happens when you uncover the dust from a mirror, you can see yourself authentically, you can see the world, and you can see the divine. You can begin to see divinity. So that's the process of bhakti, the transformation of, cleaning the mirror of the heart. There's a nice line from Rumi. What does he say? He says something like, we could dig up all our favorite Rumi things here, but he says something like, if you are disturbed by every rub, how will the mirror of your heart ever be cleaned? So sometimes it's painful, but I think the process of kirtan is so sweet. And you can feel yourself awakening to a real identity beyond man, woman, Canadian, American, this, that, the other thing. You can feel it. You can feel like that opening of the heart, and you can feel like that beloved community. You can feel like you're starting to see other people not as objects to be exploited, or as from their religion or from their country or from their gender or whatever. It's like all embracing. Wouldn't you say? Experience that? It's just such a beautiful, and it's so interesting because it's there in every tradition, right? Chant the name of God from the time the sun rises till the time the sun sets. Praise the name of God with loud cymbals and drums. It's kind of everywhere. So, but this bhakti process is, it's a practice too. What else? Any? Yes.
I'm trying to understand. We try to understand your attitude to the designations. Do you mean that designations are all false and we are all the same, or all designations matter, and there are no like inferior, superior, but there is like the eternal individuality and variety? I'm just trying to understand this subtle border.
There's an eternal individual variety as sacred spiritual beings, and each one of us has a sacred spiritual identity that is meant to be uncovered. But the temporary designations of my country or my gender or my age or my this, that, and the other thing, those are all layers on the, like masks that we wear, so we're meant to approach divinity without the masks. Real love means to shed those masks, that, one authentic person approaching the other authentic person. But underneath the masks, we do have our sacred individual, unique identities. And I'm different from you, you're different from me. So that's all waiting to be uncovered. But it's not as, the external designations. So it's not as though we're all just spiritually one homogenous blob, and that we all, we're all just gonna like get homogenized together. But that's one thing that's very important about the path of bhakti, that sacred individual identity. I'll go into some philosophy about that. So some teachers talk about how the drop of ocean has to merge with the totality of ocean, right? But on the path of bhakti, it's described that the drop of ocean has the same taste as the vast ocean, but that tiny drop of ocean cannot create a tsunami like the vast ocean. Or another example would be like a spark of the fire. So like divinity, or we love the name Krishna or Govinda. So divinity is like that big fire. And we're like little sparks. And when we're in association with that fire, we're dancing, we're full of light, right? But when we isolate, we turn cold and we can kind of go out. We have an eternal spiritual identity, we would kind of get cold and isolated. So the bhakti path is very much about that sacred individuality as a drop, the same in quality, but very infinitesimal, and the great ocean is infinite.
I think we might have time for one more question, which was
So follow-up questions. I'm trying to send to what you said about bhakti. I love that image with the symphony. And would you say then that basically when two people just come together and tune into that melody, could be a mother with her child coming, a couple in love, is that bhakti, and then what you practice together in community is amplifying that for you to carry it into those more intimate and the daily life relationships. That's one part, and one question, which however relates to me sometimes struggling to commit to one discipline, because I feel like every day I want to do such a thing. So I would go to church on Sunday, dance on Friday, Kirtan on Saturday, yoga on Tuesday, whatever it is. So it's more like for me that I have this buffet of every day I want to do a spiritual practice, but I have such a hard time to say, oh, now I deep dive into Christianity on Sundays, but deep dive into the Bhakti tradition. So yeah, and I sometimes still struggle a little bit with that, as if I'm not enough, basically, as if I'm not disciplined enough to go into one thing.
That's all right. That's super beautiful. That's so beautiful. And, at one point, something will call your heart more deeply,
Always does temporarily.
But that's all right. I mean, like I live in Washington, we love going to my husband and I, we went to the Church of the Immaculate Conception over, it was on Christmas Eve, and it was amazing. They had this amazing choir and bells, and I think we were the first ones there and the last ones to leave. So, it's like to me, it's like different tastes of sweetness. So that's beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful. There's a poem, I don't know if I could find it, about you that you reminded me of, about the mother and the child. I don't know if I get back. I found it. Okay, you just reminded me of this. This is from a 17th century saint from Maharashtra in India named Tukaram. And this is a very bhakti based poem. So see what you think of this. He says, can water quaff itself or refresh itself, right? Can trees taste of the fruit they bear? I changed the pronouns to feminine if nobody minds. She who worships God must stand distinct from him. So shall she know the joyful love of God. For if she says that God and she are one, that joy, that love shall vanish instantly away. Pray no more for utter oneness with God. Where is the beauty if jewel and setting were one? The heat and shade are two. If not, where is the comfort of shade? Mother and child are two. If not, where is their love? When after they are separated, they meet, what joy they feel, the mother and child. Where is that joy if the two were one? Pray then, talk no more of utter oneness with God. That's one poem I wanted to. Can I share another poem?
Yeah.
I love poetry, and there's a couple here that I wanted to share. So this one is from a beautiful poet Mirabai. I don't know if any of you have heard of Mirabai. She was really a rebel against her society. She was a princess, and she was hanging out, going to kirtans at the little local dusty temple. And she wasn't supposed to do that. And then finally, she just ran away to Vrindavan, which is the village of Krishna. So she was really a rebel in her time. But here's a beautiful couple of poems, actually, from Mirabai. The first one is really about kirtan. She says, it's called Awake to the Name. She says, to be born in a human body is rare. Don't throw away the reward of your past good deeds. Life passes in an instant. The leaf doesn't go back to the branch. The ocean of rebirth sweeps up all beings hard, pulls them into its cold, running, fierce, implacable currents. Giridhar, which is a name for Krishna, your name is the raft, the one safe passage over. Take me quickly. All the awake ones travel with Mira, singing the name. She says with them, get up, stop sleeping. The days of a life are short. And then here's another one I like very much. Okay. When you hear them sung, they're amazing. I don't know if any of you have ever, you sing Mirabai? So anyway, her poetry is beautiful when you hear it sung in the original language. But so this one's called Strange Are the Decrees of Fate. Strange are the decrees of fate. Behold the large eyes of the deer, yet he is forced to roam the forests. The harsh crane has brilliant plumage, while the sweet-voiced cuckoo is black. The rivers flow in pure streams, but the sea makes them salt. Fools sit on thrones as kings, while the wise beg their bread. Mira's lord is the courtly Giridhara, or again Krishna. The king persecutes the bhaktas.
So I think that we'll have another plunge into some bhakti topics after lunch. Does anybody else have any thought before we end this section?
Question or addition or subtraction complaint?
So,
Yes.
I think, oh yes.
I've been singing kirtan now for about a year,
Nice.
and I find, for me, it was like yoga. And I finally started doing yoga. It's like the more I did it, the more I wanted to do it. And it was just the love of the joy. And so many spiritual teachers say that joy is our birthright. And kirtan gives me that.
Beautiful. Yeah, joy is way beyond happiness. You know, happiness is dependent on circumstances. But joy is something that comes from within. It's very, very deep. And we can try to access that the more we go deep into kirtan, the practice of bhakti. Yeah, that joy. Well, that's what Tukaram was just talking. Where that joy, you know, that joy of that communion. Yeah. So, yeah, it's the sacred person. It's accessing that sacred person who is you, and the sacred person who is your beloved. Right? Sufis talk about the beloved so much.
And to add one more thing, I've noticed that it's opened my throat chakra in other areas of my life as well, where I may have been too shy, too scared, too worried, whatever, to say what needs to be said. Now there's no hesitation.
Yeah.
Because I come from the heart.
Mm.
I always say that. You can tell people anything if you say it from the heart.
And people recognize. So you were asking, how do you recognize fire when you're touched by fire? So when you speak from the heart, people recognize that authenticity, and that's like fire, and that's you can change yourself and change others. You know. I'm dying to read this one other poem.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is.
We'll just skip lunch.
No, I won't be accused of that. Yeah, okay. So I was telling you about my friend Lida from Tehran. And so she translates for me. She's really far out. She's actually from a Jewish family. They've been in Tehran for like hundreds and hundreds of years. Anyway, so she translates for me. So this is her translation. You won't find it in any book, but I love this. It's called Which is Better, right? Oh, friend, which is better, sugar or the sugar maker? Is the beauty of the moon better or that of the moon maker? Oh, gardens, are you better or your orchards and flowers? Or the maker of flowers and fragrant daffodils? Oh, wisdom, are you better in your knowledge and understanding? Or the maker of 100 instant insights and perceptions? Oh, love, though you cause frenzy and turbulence, there is one who makes fire of the devotee's love. I have lost myself in that oneness of love, oneness in love, not loss of identity, but oneness of love. I have become a wanderer. At times, he burns my feathers. At times, he makes me new feathers. His love fills the sea of my heart. He makes countless gems from particles of consciousness, and yet he crushes those gems and dissolves them in love, transforming such wondrous love into something else. He shines in my heart like the sun. He throws arrows externally and makes shields in essence.
Thank you, Rukmini.
So we're like crossing borders here.
It was such a pleasure to be able to sit here and ask you questions. I didn't feel uncomfortable at all in front of everybody. I felt quite at ease in your presence. So thank you so much for that beautiful wisdom and sharing of your personal life as well. Yeah. Where is our MC? Ah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.